The next topic that we are going to discuss is that how this electronic media in Pakistan is being regulated right now. In 2002, an ordinance was issued. This was the time of when General Pervez Musharraf was the president of Pakistan, and he issued an ordinance in which an organization was established which was called Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority, which we all know as PEMRA. So PEMRA was established back in 2002, and this is the organization which basically regulates all the electronic media channels in Pakistan, which are private channels, not the government owned channels. So what we know about government owned channels is that there is BBC, Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation, and that basically is responsible for the management of PTV, Radio Pakistan, and all the different government-owned channels. But as far as private media is concerned, that is regulated by PEMRA, which was established back in 2002. All the details that you should know about PEMRA, I have basically mentioned them in the notes. You can check that there are objectives of PEMRA, that what is basically their mandate, and then there is this legislation timeline of the PEMRA starting from 2002 till now, that what are the different directives and rules and regulations that they have passed over the years. So that is also mentioned in the notes. And then because there are different responsibilities of PEMRA, so major responsibility is to basically regulate all the news, all the private media channels in Pakistan, and the first thing in regulation is to actually provide them license to operate in Pakistan. So they do licensing of all these channels. No channel here in Pakistan, either radio or television channel that is of private nature, can actually operate unless they get approval of PEMRA and they get license of PEMRA. So there are different channels and different kinds of channels that they basically license. So all of those different categories are mentioned in the notes. You can check that, and if you need more details of that, then you can check PEMRA's website, because over there they have included all the different rules and regulations that they follow while doing licensing for these channels. But in this course, that is not our concern, how to get license for a channel. What our concern is that once you have the channels, or once you are working in a channel, what are the different guidelines that you are following. So what you are going to do, everything is mentioned in the notes. Just check the notes, and if you want to get more details, you can check PEMRA's website, where you will find their objectives and the legislation process and all the different rules and regulations. So what we are going to discuss majorly in this module is basically the code of conduct that PEMRA has given to all the television channels. PEMRA, ever since its formation back in 2002 till now, has at different points in time advised television channels individually about different ethical issues that PEMRA might think needs to be addressed, but it has also provided a regulatory framework in the sense that it has prepared code of conduct for electronic media. So in 2009 there was a code of conduct, then in 2010 again there was a code of conduct, then in 2015 they had PEMRA rules and regulations. It's a very elaborated document, and I'm going to give its link so you can check it, where they provided us the guidelines for media persons, that what are the different ethical issues that they should follow while doing their practice. If we just explain it or we try to understand it, we can probably divide them in two parts. First is the code of conduct for programs and for news channels, and then others are code of conduct for the advertisers, because we all know that advertising is a huge part of electronic media. So they have a code of conduct for advertisers as well, which is a part of the 2015 code of conduct by PEMRA. I'm not going to discuss the advertisers code of conduct because that is a part of another module, but the ones for television channel, that is something that I'm going to discuss now. First, let us look at the different content related guidelines that PEMRA has issued to television channels. What PEMRA says that on any television channel, no content should be aired which passes any kind of derogatory remarks about any sect, about any religion, or about any community, and no channel should be able to basically promote any kind of sectarian disharmony or racial disharmony in the country. Now this is very important because we see that certain channels, certain anchor persons and programs do that they passes derogatory remarks and at least kind of remarks that might entice somebody to violence against certain kind of community. Pakistan is an Islamic republic, but all the minorities have the rights to live here peacefully, and all the different sects and different communities should live in harmony. So the first point basically refers to that religious harmony in Pakistan, that channels should ensure that through their programming. Then it says that no content should be aired which contains material which are against the ideology of Pakistan or Islamic values. Since we are the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, then nothing should be aired which basically question the ideology of Pakistan or try to undermine the Islamic values of the country. This is the same thing which was mentioned in Article 19 as well. So you will notice that all these different points actually basically just explains the Article 19 in a proper way. Then it talks about that there should be no content which may be detrimental to the relations of Pakistan with other countries. Again, this is something which was mentioned in Article 19, so they are just trying to explain it further, that television channels should not do programs which might affect our relations with the foreign states and with the friendly neighbors that we have. Then it says that no content should be aired which basically brings certain kind of contempt to Pakistan as and our people. So we are an independent country and we are a nation which should be respected, and we have our own integrity. So no content should be aired which will probably bring contempt to Pakistan. And if you notice, then last year when the entire Balakot strikes happened and the Abhinandan episode happened, so after that PEMRA actually directed all the television channels to stop airing Indian content. And even though the Indian content they were on airing at that point of time did not address anything against Pakistan, but just the fact that we were in a situation where the situation was not really good at the borders, so they didn't want it to have Indian content on our channels. And then it says then channels should be very careful and they should not promote any content which contains anything pornographic or anything indecent or anything obscene, because ultimately that is going to hurt the public morality. Being a Pakistani, we have certain ethical values and we should not show programs which might try to affect our ethics that way. So again, this is something which was mentioned in Article 19 as well, that you should not do anything while exercising your right to freedom of expression which is indecent and immoral. And the same thing happens here, but they basically explains it further, that anything which might be pornographic or obscene or indecent, that should not be shown on television channels. Okay, the next point is very important because here they are talking about how you are going to portray different communities on media. So PEMRA says that channel should be very careful that no content should get on air which includes any kind of abusing comments about any individual or any community, and if that comment is taken out of context, that might entice people to hate that community. Okay, so what they are talking about here is that no hate comment should be made about any community on the basis of their race or caste or their ethnicity or their language or their color or their sect or their sex. So that is something which is very important. The next point mentioned in PEMRA rules is quite important and relevant in today's time, because that is about incitement to an offense. So what PEMRA says, that no television channel should honor things which might lead certain ethnic group or certain race or certain genders or certain communities to any kind of hatred in the society. And then they are talking about that this is the kind of content which are going to probably entice violence against people, and they are going to perhaps promote any kind of anti-state attitudes. So that is something which is very important, and PEMRA has barred television channels from doing it. So even if there are certain elements which are anti-state, channels should not give them any coverage. Use of abusive language is something which is a big no-no as far as television channels are concerned. This is something that perhaps even PEMRA doesn't need to tell channels, but of course it has included this point in its rules and regulations that channels should not include any kind of abusive language, whether they are news channels or dramas, fiction. So what really happens when say if it's a television show and there is some kind of an abuse, probably two politicians are sitting and one has abused another, so they have asked all the channels to have a time delay mechanism in place where there should be some kind of delay in the transmission, so that they should be able to actually mute that abuse. We have even recently saw that that in one of the shows earlier in March this year, they were discussing Aurat March, and there was a popular writer Khalil Rahman Kamar, and there was a cleric, and then there was a civil rights activist Mavi Samad who was there, and there was exchange of heated words. Actually, heated words is an understatement. So he literally abused the lady, and she was also basically using a lot of heated words for him throughout the show, but he literally abused the lady on the show. And later on, PEMRA actually issued a directive against that show and the anchor person, because they could not somehow they handle the situation and they did not mute the words. So even if now you will go to their YouTube channel and try to watch the entire show, they have edited out that part where the abuse was there. But since the video was already out on the social media, so the video is there separately, the abusive video, and the major show is there separately. But channel has issued a notification and a directive. I think they fined the channel or something like that, or a show cause notice was issued to them because abusive language is not allowed at all. The next point that PEMRA discuss is very important, and that is about that television channels should not promote or should not on air any content that might affect the integrity of our armed forces and our courts, because both our armed forces as well as the courts are the pillars of the state, and channels, while doing their reporting, while doing their analysis, should be very careful that they should not say anything which might put them to ridicule, or that should be called contempt of the court or contempt of the army. So that is something which is very important for our television channels to follow. Then they are talking about not even just these organizations, even a common person, and every citizen of Pakistan has a dignity, and that is again mentioned in the Constitution of Pakistan, that we should respect the dignity of every individual, every citizen of the state. And PEMRA explains the same thing in its rules. Then another thing that PEMRA's rules talks about is making careless comments about one class being superior and one class being inferior. Now that is something which is very important, because we often see that channels or these programs do certain things where they are trying to demean certain classes, they are trying to demean certain communities for that matter. So channels should never do that. They should actually try to promote integrity or integration in the society, instead of making comments, instead of making careless comments, to be honest, about different communities or about specific sections of the society. Another point which is there in PEMRA's regulation is that channels should not show anything which might glorify criminals, or which might glorify any crime. That is very important, because specifically when we see fiction or maybe television dramas, if you are going to glorify a criminal, people are going to follow that character, and that happens a lot. So that should be something that channels should be very careful about. Another rule which is there in the PEMRA Code of Conduct of 2015 is about reenactments. Often you see these shows where they are showing reenactments of different crimes which has happened in the country, and how police actually finally found the criminals and arrested them and all of that. So the directive says that while showing all these reenactments, you have to make sure that throughout the program on the screen reenactment should be shown, that if any person is switching on that channel at any given point, that person should know that these are not real people who are fighting and who are probably doing a robbery or something. This is just a reenactment of an incident that has already happened. So even in these reenactments, you are allowed to do reenactments as far as you will have that on screen, that this is dramatized and this is not real. But even while doing that, you cannot show certain kind of things. For example, channels cannot show a reenactment of a murder or any kind of execution for that matter. So you cannot show people killing people in that reenactment show. You cannot show any kind of a court scene, and you cannot show any kind of a physical abuse, and you cannot, for example, like rapes or sexual abuse, and you cannot really show blood or things like this which are really gruesome. So even if you are showing reenactment, you have to ensure that you can dramatize it, but you cannot show all these different things. PEMRA has also powered television channels to show anything which will include characters doing smoking, or at least making smoking and drinking glamorous in their shows. So PEMRA has already barred all the television channels from that. So smoking, drug abuse, showing alcohol or even tobacco products, that is a big no-no. And even you might see that in certain channels, but you can always see that whenever they are showing a person smoking or a person drinking or something like that, they will have this disclaimer on the screen which will tell you that it's illegal and it's un-Islamic or whatever. So that is something again which is a directive by PEMRA. PEMRA has also directed all its licensees, all the television channels and all the radio channels, that they should take care about the intellectual property rights and copyrights while showing any kind of content. So the content they are showing, it should not violate any copyright or any intellectual property right. This is very much there in Pakistan actually. So you will see that we are the nation that basically most of our entertainment is based on pirated DVDs and pirated movies and all. So channels have been barred from doing that. If they can get a copyright of a certain product, they can definitely going to show it on their channels, otherwise they cannot. And this is something which PEMRA has advised all the channels to respect.